World Carnivorous Plant Day. My name is Avery Meijer. I'm here with my friend Jermiah Harris. We wanted to discuss 5 tips to help you start growing your carnivorous plants if you're a beginner. So Jeremiah, could you introduce yourself and tell me more about yourself?
Hey guys, I'm Jermiah Harris. I grow carnivorous plants here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I've been growing carnivorous plants since about 1992, and here we are in my largest greenhouse, which has temperate carnivorous plants on this side and then tropical carnivorous plants behind me. I love all carnivorous plants, but Nepenthes have been my favorite since I was a little kid.
I've been growing carnivorous plants for many years on and off. I just moved here to Denver and I'm getting my collection back up with the help of Jeremiah. So really great guy, a lot to learn. So let's get into the questions. All right. So if you're starting out, what kind of conditions would you recommend for a beginner for carnivorous plants?
So most people start with a Venus flytrap, and that is like the one carnivorous plant that everyone has heard of. Venus flytraps are not that difficult as long as you give them a lot of light and keep them sitting in about a ½ inch of pure water at all time. The light is the most important mistake that I see new growers make, definitely. Because it's not like a house plant like a philodendron or a pothos where you can just stick it in a corner and expect it to be happy. It needs to be in at least a south-facing window and probably with some supplemental LED lights these days. And supplemental LEDs are amazing over the last 5 or 6 years. There are some great lights that you can get at a relatively reasonable price. Venus flytraps are the most fun to grow as a kid because they do snap shut on your finger or a small fly. But also Sarracenia are really good. They can be grown outdoors in most of the country, if not year-round, at least during the summer months. And then Nepenthes are a little bit more tricky depending on where you live. They do like a little bit higher humidity, a little bit less light, and can be a little bit more challenging at times.
Would you recommend something like a Sarracenia or a Venus flytrap to a beginner for outside growth?
Oh, for sure. In almost anywhere in the country, you just put them outside as soon as there's no longer going to be a frost in the spring. And then even the Venus flytraps and Sarracenia can actually take a good hard frost down to 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Nice. Colder than that, and you might get some losses in the winter. I've grown some outside year-round in Colorado. They don't normally make it through the winter. We'll get as cold as like -20 here, so it's not really realistic. But somewhere like Florida, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, all the Pacific Northwest, you just leave them outside year-round and they'll be happy.
When I was growing in Texas, I just had my tables outside. They froze over. They didn't care. Here in Denver, first year growing outside, I already have a few losses because it's so cold.
It can get cold.
I think that's another important thing is that you're going to kill your first plants probably, and that's okay. That's how you learn. I mean,
it happens to everyone.
I guarantee you've killed just as many plants as you've grown.
Oh, so. I've killed a lot of plants over the years. You kind of get things right. And then hopefully I don't kill any rare ones now, but still each year, some plants die, and it happens if you forget to water it, or they're in a spot that doesn't get misting and they dry out and you're like, no, it's dead. But usually they'll come back.
It's a learning process.
It is. And Pinguicula are also a really great one for new growers. They produce these wonderful, vibrant flowers, and they can be grown in windowsills probably better than any other variety of carnivorous plants. They don't need just extreme sunlight, so just some nice direct sunlight for a couple hours a day, and they don't need high humidity, and then they can dry out a little bit more than a lot of carnivorous plants as well.
That's awesome. So speaking of light, I know light is something that a lot of new growers struggle with. I, for one, you look at these plants, they look like tropical, exotic plants from the Amazon that are going to be deep in the jungle. But no, they really do need, a lot of them need just full straight sun.
Yeah, I mean, Venus flytraps only come from about 100-mile radius of Wilmington, North Carolina, and they, for the most part, grow in open bogs in that area. As soon as the brush starts to overgrow the Venus flytraps, they won't do as well. So they like to grow in places where other plants don't thrive, therefore they're carnivorous, and that helps them outcompete some of the other plants that are natively grown in those same areas. So blast these with sunlight as much as you can. In the greenhouse here, they pretty much get direct sunlight from sunrise to sunset, and that's what they like. If they weren't getting that, I would even add some supplemental LEDs over these.
So for other plants like pings or nepenthes, would you recommend, if you don't have enough light on the windowsill, like some cheap LEDs and for like at least 12 hours a day, right?
Yeah, 12 hours a day seems to be ideal. You can go up to as much as like 16. Sometimes I like to work in the grow chamber where I have supplemental light later into the evening, so I do have it on a 16-hour photo cycle. So that means the lights are on for a 16-hour period each day. But yeah, 12 hours or a little bit more is perfect. And LED lights, you can get them for relatively inexpensive to a couple $100s per light, and it just really depends on what you need and usually the intensity of the lights.
Awesome. So what about water? Water is a big one. I've killed a lot of plants myself when I was starting out because the resources available didn't tell you needed very clean water.
That is another thing that carnivorous plants love, very pure water. So water, we'll measure it by TDS, so total dissolved solids. And if that level is above about 100 parts per million, that will be too high to use for carnivorous plants long term. In emergencies, you could use higher TDS water at times, but I definitely wouldn't recommend it. I shoot for something at about 50 parts per million or less. Most of the country, that will mean you'll have to use rainwater, which you can collect your own. It's free, it's efficient, it's usually very clean. Distilled water, which you can buy in any grocery store, or buying a reverse osmosis system or an RO system. I would definitely recommend that once your collection gets a little bit larger. If you have that like 30 or 40 plants, you'll be spending a little more on water if you have to buy it by the gallon from the grocery store.
Usually for me, once I'm using more than 5 or 10 gallons a week, time to switch over, time to invest in a good filter, because believe me, it makes your life so much easier and you save money and time.
Exactly.
Because I mean, imagine watering all of this with little jugs of water.
It would not be feasible.
All right, so these plants are carnivorous, so they kind of self-fertilize, but if you're just starting out, should you fertilize them?
So fertilizing has been a very controversial subject with carnivorous plants over the years. It used to be the general rule of thumb was never fertilize any carnivorous plant. Now, I would not agree with that. Once you get the basics down, a little fertilization can be amazing, but also these plants will catch their own meals all the time. So if you put a plant outside, the Sarracenia will fill up with hundreds of insects over the course of a summer. A Venus flytrap will catch all it needs to actually survive. But since they're a plant, they photosynthesize. So an insect is like a little vitamin to them. It would help them grow maybe a little bit better, a little bit faster, but most of these plants could go their entire existence without ever actually eating an insect, especially in cultivation. Me personally, I like to use a seaweed-based fertilizer. I use Maxi at 1/4 strength and use it about twice a month during the growing seasons. Now, there are a lot of different fertilizers that will work. You just want something that's very low in salt and doesn't have a whole lot of urethra in it. But other than that, I wouldn't recommend playing around too much with fertilizer until you get the basics down. Fertilizing a carnivorous plant is not going to bring it back from the doorstep of death. It will help a carnivorous plant that's already doing well do a little bit better.
So when it comes to fertilization, you want to use soil that doesn't have any nutrients in it, correct?
Yes, so that is important because any of the pre-mixed Miracle-Gro soils are going to have too much soil in it, too much fertilizer in the soil for carnivorous plants. So I would definitely recommend something with no added nutrients whatsoever, and then you can add the nutrients later on if the plants are doing well and if that's something you want to try.
I personally recommend, like Home Depot has the big bales of just peat that you can use. Yep. And you can buy perlite online, sometimes cheaper than going in person, but you make your own soil and it can really help with cost, and you know that there's no nutrients in it, so you're not going to accidentally kill something. Because when I was a kid, at the end, I definitely thought, oh, it's Miracle-Gro, I can use it. No, do not use Miracle-Gro.
Miracle-Gro is going to be too strong for these guys.
Yeah. All right, so with that in mind, what are the best beginner carnivorous plants, like type-wise, and where should you buy them?
Yeah, so I mean, Venus flytraps are always fun to start off with. I got my first ever carnivorous plant from Home Depot when I was about 4 or 5 years old, so that's always a good place to start. If they have carnivorous plants in stock, it's easy enough, they're relatively inexpensive, but the only place that's going to have them all the time in most parts of the country is going to be online. So there are a lot of really reputable nurseries online. I would recommend places like California Carnivores, Carnivoro, especially if you're just getting started. Pearl River Exotics has some really nice nepenthes that are very reasonable, and some nepenthes are quite a bit easier than others.
Yes.
I do sell carnivorous plants. I would definitely recommend me after you've built up a little collection already. I sell some of the rarer ones, and I don't ship any plant potted, so it'd be best if you already have the soil and the pots. But yeah, we'll leave a pretty good sized list of all the reputable ones that we can think of. But yeah, a lot of good places online these days in the US.
Once you get into the hobby, you can start reaching out to people individually and trading.
Trading is so much fun.
Yeah, that's where
and then you can get really rare and valuable plants for basically just you send them something rare and valuable and then the cost of shipping.
Yeah, and that's a great way to expand your collections long term is like that. So any other tips that you recommend?
Light, water, humidity is another thing. A lot of people are like, oh, Venus flytraps, they need a lot of humidity. No, they really don't. I mean, if you have 50% humidity, they'll be perfectly happy. Some of the tropical ones, they do need a little bit higher humidity. So once you get a little bit more advanced, Heliumphora, Nepenthes, they like humidity above about 70% pretty much at all times, where flytraps, they can take it even a few days as down to 10 or 15% and still be fine. So don't worry about the humidity for Venus flytraps, Sarracenia, like American pitcher plants, and a lot of sundews and Pinguicula do fine in pretty low humidity.
And then definitely make sure these guys never ever dry out, right?
Exactly. A Venus flytrap like these, they are sitting in about a ½ inch of water at all times. So they love very wet feet and they do not like to dry out. If they dried out for more than 2 days, it would probably be the end of that Venus flytrap, especially depending on how hot it is outside.
Yes. So I think that's everything. So with these tips, you should be able to start growing your own carnivorous plants, and Jeremiah hopefully will help me make some more videos going a little bit more in depth over time. If you want to see more of that, please feel free to subscribe to my channel. I'll be linking Jeremiah's as well. He does awesome greenhouse tours every few months, and they're always great to watch.
So much fun.
But thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Happy World Carnivorous Plant Day. See you all soon.